Have you ever caught yourself giving a long explanation for something that really only needed a simple answer? Maybe you said no to an invitation and then suddenly found yourself piling on reasons. You start with one explanation, then you add another, and before you know it, you've told a whole story just to soften a choice that was perfectly valid on its own. It happens in so many small moments. You might decline an activity and immediately feel the need to explain why. You might choose not to take part in something and suddenly list out every task on your schedule as if proving that your decision is justified. And sometimes you walk away wondering why you said so much. Why did I feel the need to defend myself when all I really meant was a simple no? This is something so many of us do, often without even noticing. It becomes a habit, something we slip into without questioning. We explain, we justify, we smooth over, and underneath it all, there's often a quiet feeling that we need to be understood, that if we don't explain ourselves fully, someone might think less of us. So we fill the silence with details. But here's the truth. Over-explaining rarely brings the comfort we're searching for. More often, it leaves us feeling drained. It can even make us second-guess choices that were perfectly clear before we started justifying them. And, in a way, it chips away at the confidence we have in our own voice. I think part of why this happens is because so many of us were taught in subtle ways that saying no or making an independent choice required softening. We might have learned that we had to give reasons to avoid sounding unfriendly, or that if we explained enough, others would accept our decisions more easily. Over time, those lessons sink in, and without realizing it, we begin to live as though our choices are not quite enough on their own. But here's a question worth holding on to. What if your choices don't need defending? What if a decision you make is already complete the moment you make it, without an extra sentence, without a long explanation, without a list of reasons? That idea can feel almost radical at first. Because explaining has been part of our rhythm for so long, it feels natural. The silence after a short, clear answer can feel heavy, even awkward. And yet, there is a kind of strength in that silence, a strength that says, I trust my choice. I don't need to dress it up. So in today's conversation, we're going to slow down together and look at why we overexplain. This isn't about being harsh. It's not about shutting people out. It's about reclaiming the right to stand in our decisions without always reaching for justification. It's about learning that clarity and kindness can live together in a simple sentence. Chapter 1. Why we overexplain. When we pause and look closely at why we overexplain, it often reveals something tender underneath. Overexplaining is not a flaw, and it is not a sign that we are weak. In fact, it often grows out of qualities that are deeply human. The desire to be understood, the wish to avoid conflict, and the hope of being seen in a kind light. Think about how many times in life we are taught that being agreeable is safer than being firm. From an early age, many of us learn that if we say yes quickly, we are praised for being cooperative. If we say no, we are often expected to cushion it, to make it softer, to show that we are still thoughtful and considerate. Over time, this becomes second nature. Saying no without explanation feels almost incomplete, like leaving a thought unfinished. Sometimes over-explaining comes from the quiet fear of being misunderstood. We imagine that if we give too short of an answer, someone might fill in the silence with their own assumptions. And so, we rush to fill that silence ourselves, layering on detail after detail, hoping that if we say enough, the other person will understand our heart. But the truth is, no matter how much we explain, we cannot control how others interpret our choices. We cannot manage their disappointment or their opinions with our words. Other times, over-explaining comes from the discomfort of conflict. Even small disagreements can feel heavy, so we use extra words to soften the edges. We give reasons not because they are needed, but because we hope they will protect us from criticism. It is almost like we believe if we just explain thoroughly enough, no one will question us. But in reality, those extra words rarely shield us. Instead, they often make us feel exposed because we have given away more of ourselves than was necessary. There is also a part of us that feels guilty when we say no. Guilt can be subtle. It whispers that we owe someone our time, our presence, or our energy. And so, to ease that guilt, we give explanations. We try to prove, even to ourselves, that we had a good reason. Yet, guilt does not fade because of more words. It only fades when we give ourselves permission to trust that our boundaries are valid. And then there is habit. Over-explaining becomes a rhythm we fall into without thinking. The words tumble out before we even realize what we're doing. We may catch ourselves mid-sentence, already halfway through an explanation that wasn't asked for. That's because it has become a well-worn path in our communication. Our minds automatically walk down it, especially when we feel uncertain. But here's something worth noticing. Most of the time, the people we're explaining to didn't ask for all the details. They might have simply asked a yes or no question, and we answered with a whole story. The urge didn't come from them. It came from within us. That is why the work of change begins not with others, but with ourselves. When you step back and reflect on this habit, you may realize that over-explaining was once a tool you used to feel safe, accepted, or understood. And in many ways, it served you in the past. But as life moves forward, we begin to see that we no longer need to carry that old tool everywhere. We can set it down. We can learn a new way of answering, one that trusts in our voice without needing decoration. Over-explaining doesn't make you a bad communicator. It makes you human. But the more we practice noticing it, the more we can gently begin to unlearn it. And in unlearning it, we make room for something new, a calm, steady confidence that reminds us our choices can stand on their own. Chapter 2. The Cost of Over-explaining. At first glance, over-explaining can feel harmless. After all, it's just words. It's just sharing more of the story. But if we look more closely, we start to notice the quiet toll it takes on us over time. Every time we give more reasons than are needed, every time we hand over a long explanation for a simple choice, something shifts inside us. It may seem small in the moment, but these moments add up. One of the clearest costs is the energy it drains. Words take effort. Every time you explain and explain again, you're giving away pieces of your attention and focus. And it is often in situations that don't deserve that much of your energy. Imagine being asked to do something small and responding with an answer that stretches on for minutes. By the time you're done, you've invested far more of yourself than the situation required. Later, you might feel tired or even frustrated, wondering why you gave so much of yourself to such a small exchange. Another cost is that it weakens the boundaries you were trying to set in the first place. When you offer a long explanation, you open the door for negotiation. You may think you're protecting your decision by giving lots of reasons, but in reality, you're making it easier for someone to push back. The more information you share, the more room there is for the other person to suggest alternatives, to argue, or to try to solve the problem for you. A simple no is a closed door. A long explanation often feels like a door left slightly open. Over-explaining also changes the way we sound to ourselves. When you hear your own voice given reason after reason, it can make your decision feel less solid. What started as a confident no begins to feel shaky, almost as if you're trying to convince yourself as much as the other person. This can plant seeds of doubt. You may start questioning whether your choice was reasonable at all. That doubt can linger long after the conversation has ended, leaving you unsettled. And then there is the emotional weight. Each time you explain yourself too much, you may notice a subtle feeling of frustration. Frustration at the situation, frustration at the other person, and most of all, frustration at yourself for not keeping your answers simple. This frustration builds over time. It can turn into resentment, not only toward others, but also toward yourself. You might walk away thinking, I should have just said no. I didn't need to say all that. That self-criticism can chip away at your sense of calm. Perhaps one of the greatest costs, though, is the way it teaches you to mistrust your own voice. Every time you add unnecessary explanations, you send yourself a message. My choice alone isn't enough. I need backup. I need justification. Over time, this quiet message shapes how you see yourself. Instead of standing firmly in your decisions, you begin to feel like you need permission. That permission-seeking can follow you into many parts of life, keeping you from feeling free in your choices. And let's not forget the simple truth that over-explaining takes up time. Time that could be spent on rest, on joy, on things that truly matter to you. Every conversation that stretches longer than it needs to because of unnecessary details is time you won't get back. It's a small cost in each moment, but when we add them together over weeks and years, it becomes significant. So when we look at all of this together, we see that over-explaining is not just about extra words. It's about energy drained, boundaries weakened, doubt planted, and confidence slowly chipped away. That is why it matters to notice this habit, not to scold yourself or to feel ashamed, but to recognize that this small shift, learn to say less, can give back so much. Because when you stop over-explaining, you reclaim your time, you reclaim your energy, you strengthen your boundaries, and most importantly, you begin to hear your own voice as enough. That shift may feel small at first, but it is powerful. Chapter 3. You don't owe anyone a reason. There is a simple truth that can feel surprisingly hard to accept. You do not owe anyone a reason for the choices you make in your own life. That sentence may sound bold, it may even sound uncomfortable, but it carries with it a kind of freedom that many of us rarely allow ourselves to feel. From the time we were young, many of us were taught that good answers come with explanations. If you declined an offer, you were expected to give a reason. If you chose differently than what was suggested, you had to explain why. The idea of offering a simple no or not right now was seen as incomplete. And so we grew up believing that our choices by themselves weren't quite enough. They needed decoration, justification, or proof. But what if that isn't true? What if your choices are whole and valid the moment you make them? Imagine saying, no thank you, and leaving it at that, or that doesn't work for me with no additional explanation, short, clear, and done. At first, it may feel abrupt, even a little uncomfortable. That discomfort comes not because it is wrong, but because it is unfamiliar. It is a new way of standing in your own clarity. The truth is, not giving an explanation does not make you rude. It makes you clear. Clarity is not unkind. In fact, it can be a form of respect. When your answer is simple and direct, people know where you stand. There is no confusion, no mixed signals. Your words match your intention. That is a gift, both to you and to others. Now, of course, there are moments in life where an explanation is necessary. In professional situations, with commitments that affect others, or in matters of responsibility, clarity requires more detail. But in the everyday choices that belong solely to you, how you spend your time, what you take on, what you say yes or no to, you don't owe anyone a reason. Your time and your energy are yours to manage, and protecting them does not require justification. Think about the last time you gave a long explanation for something simple. Perhaps it was declining an invitation or choosing not to add one more thing to your already full day. Imagine if, instead of explaining, you had allowed yourself to simply say, "Thank you, but no." That small act of brevity might have felt strange in the moment, but it would have left you with more energy, more confidence, and more trust in your own voice. When you allow yourself to stand by your choices without explaining them away, you begin to send yourself a new message. You say, "I trust my own judgment. I don't need to defend it." That message, repeated over time, builds a deeper sense of confidence. You begin to believe that your decisions are strong enough to stand on their own. And when you believe that, others begin to sense it too. There is also something deeply peaceful about not carrying the weight of constant justification. When you know you do not owe anyone a reason, you give yourself permission to rest in your choices. You no longer feel the pressure to edit or polish your words to make them acceptable. You speak simply, and then you stop. That stopping point is powerful. It says, "I have nothing more to prove." At first, silence after a short answer may feel heavy. You may feel the urge to rush in and fill it, to soften it with more words. But in that silence lies a quiet kind of strength. It is the sound of boundaries holding steady. It is the sound of confidence breathing. Over time, that silence no longer feels uncomfortable. It begins to feel natural. It begins to feel freeing. So let this truth settle gently. Your choices already belong to you. They do not need to be explained away to be valid. You do not need to earn the right to say no, or to choose differently, or to protect your time. The moment you make a decision, it is enough. Chapter 4. Practical ways to stop overexplaining. It's one thing to understand why we overexplain and what it costs us. It's another to practice a new way of responding. Change doesn't happen all at once. It's often small, deliberate steps that begin to shift the way we speak and the way we carry ourselves. So let's talk about how to move from over-explaining to standing firm in ways that feel gentle but steady. One of the simplest yet most powerful tools is to practice using short, clear language. Instead of layering your words with reasons, try simple statements like, "I can't make it," or "That doesn't work for me." At first, these sentences may feel almost unfinished, as if you need to add more to make them complete. But the truth is, they are already whole. They communicate your decision clearly. Nothing more is required. The next step is to pause before you explain. When you feel that familiar pull rising up, the urge to justify, to add more details, allow yourself to breathe instead. Take a slow pause. This pause is your moment of choice. You can either step into the old habit of filling the space, or you can choose to sit quietly and let your answer stand. That pause is where your strength begins to grow. Another gentle tool is to replace explanations with gratitude. Sometimes we overexplain because we don't want to sound harsh. We want the other person to know we appreciate them, even if our answer is no. Gratitude allows us to communicate kindness without slipping into justification. Instead of saying, "I'm so sorry I can't because I've got so many other things going on right now," you can simply say, "Thank you for asking, but I'll pass this time." Gratitude honors the invitation or the offer while keeping your boundary intact. It also helps to practice phrases that feel natural to you. Having a few ready-made responses can make it easier to stand firm. For example, "I won't be able to this time," or "I appreciate it, but I'm not available." Notice how these phrases are short, kind, and clear. The more you practice them, the more they become part of your rhythm, replacing the old habit of overexplaining. And then there's the practice of learning to sit with discomfort. This may be the most challenging part. When you first start giving shorter answers, the silence afterward can feel heavy. You may feel an itch to fill it with extra words. But if you can breathe through that discomfort, you'll notice something powerful. The silence does not hurt you. It does not take anything away from you. It simply holds space for your choice. Over time, that silence begins to feel less like emptiness and more like strength. Another practical step is to become more aware of the situations that trigger your urge to explain. You may notice that certain people or certain requests make you more likely to pour out reasons. Awareness is the first step to change. Once you notice, you can prepare yourself. You can remind yourself in advance, "This time, I'm going to keep it simple." The more you notice, the more control you gain over the habit. It can also help to reflect on your deeper values. Remind yourself that your time and energy matter. When you say no to one thing, you're saying yes to something else, perhaps rest or space or a commitment that truly matters to you. Holding on to that reminder can make it easier to trust your short answers. They are not just refusals. They are choices that protect what is important to you. Finally, be gentle with yourself. Habits take time to change. You may catch yourself over-explaining again and again. That's okay. Each time you notice, you're building awareness. Each time you practice saying less, you're strengthening a new muscle. Progress is not about perfection. It's about small shifts that add up over time. So as you move forward, remember these simple steps. Keep your words short and clear. Pause before adding more. Replace explanations with gratitude. Prepare phrases that feel natural. Sit with the discomfort of silence. And remind yourself that your time is valuable. Each of these practices may feel small, but together they begin to transform the way you communicate. As we come to the close of this conversation, I want to leave you with a gentle reminder. You don't have to explain yourself nearly as much as you think you do. Your choices are enough. Your words are enough. And you are enough. Over-explaining is a habit many of us carry quietly, almost without realizing it. It comes at a cost. It drains your energy. It weakens your boundaries. It makes you second-guess yourself. And it leaves you feeling as though you need permission to live your own life. But the truth is, you do not owe anyone a reason for protecting your time, for choosing differently, or for saying no. A short, clear answer can be enough. And with practice, it begins to feel not only natural, but freeing.